Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
Someone says, what's the future? Vaughn Coleman.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, Vaughn Coleman. We already got someone in the chat. Randy Howell, how you doing? I'm guessing you're a fan of DC Comics, saying, damn, it's 50 degrees here, Rob. You better bring the heat. Well, that's his responsibility. In the meantime, for about a minute or so, I will do whatever I can. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't heard about this book, well, 700 people at least are interested enough to join the mailing list. So why haven't you if you haven't? Of course, I'm talking about my comic book, Phenomenova Issue 1, Lightning Strikes. So my comic book is set 20 years after World War III, which Rob just did a video about. So that might be a reality. I'm hoping not. Listen, I wrote this as if it's in the realm of fantasy. Let's keep it there. You know what I mean? But in case that doesn't happen, here's a world where supervillains help get us into World War III, but superheroes help get us out of it. And now 20 years later, we see that the world is still standing, and a new hero named Miles Hanksley, the son of a veteran, emerges to join a team that will be called Phenomenova. Before that point, he's going to be arrogant and strike out on his own, becoming Galvanite, and he will suffer the consequences. The book is completely finished. It's at the printer. It should be printing, actually. The date is tomorrow, actually. I'm going to have to check in with the printer tomorrow. And then I plan on shipping it out next week around like November 5th, around the election, actually. Which reminds me, I got to look into early voting. But yeah, if that sounds interesting, definitely join this mailing list. So, that is going on. But, you know, this mailing list worked out so well, I figured I'd start one for my next project, which I am working on. So I was writing superhero stuff, but I'm also a big horror movie fan. And, you know, it being October and all, I'm really allowing myself to catch the horror bug this month. And I'm writing short stories, you know, stories where I don't have to pay an artist, where I get to do whatever. But if you're an artist, you could still submit. But basically, this is going to be a short story collection, as well as poems, as well as artwork, all kinds of stuff. Anyone can submit. Me and my buddy Ali Lauderdale, a.k.a. Ali Sanguis, and I are doing this mailing list for our own anthology book called Represent Pursuit. The deadline is on Valentine's Day, so you've got time if you want to submit. Anyone can submit. If you're an artist, if you're a writer, what have you. But join the mailing list, Reapers in Pursuit, and you can be up to date on all things that. I've already written 2 stories and a poem, and I want to write more. In fact, you know, I'm just totally in the horror mood, thanks to like Terrifier 3. You know, even though I had mixed thoughts on that movie, the success of that franchise really inspired me and made me want to take another look at my my old slasher movie script. So who knows? Maybe I'll do something with that. But in the meantime, make sure you check this out. Here is the submission form. I'm going to say RIP form. Just keep it simple. For Reapers in Pursuit, it gives you all the information you can need about what you can expect to see in the anthology. And if you're interested in submitting, everything is down here. Just put your name, your email, and upload what you want to upload. We've already been getting submissions, so if you want to get eyes on your work, now is a good time. So with that being said, I've talked about myself sufficiently. Let me go ahead and bring in the guests. Please welcome Rob Hunter. How's it going, Rob?
Hello. I was told to bring the heat.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
What kind of heat am I supposed to bring?
That's a question for Randy. Randy, you got to let him know.
Heat?
Question mark? Yeah, I don't know, Randy.
I'm a little confused. What do you want? What kind of heat you want, brother? Dude, I got my AC running in October Randy's saying it's 50 there. I better bring the heat. Bring the heat. I would like it to be a little cooler so I don't have a $500 electric bill. That's what when I get a $400 electric bill, I'm actually excited. So
That's fun. Yeah, that can get you all giddy.
well,
$400.
well, my wife and I, we were in a 2-bedroom apartment before we moved into our house, and we're like, oh yeah, hey, that's the mortgage payment. Okay, we can handle that. We were used to like maximum $150 electric bill. We roll into this house, and then like the first month, the water bill shows up, the electric bill shows up. We're like, what the F is all of this? Oh.
Dan, you got sorry, he was just posting about this. You got a Brett Booth cover. It's been a while since I backed it like very early on, so it's been a while since I've looked. But a Brett cover, that's awesome.
Dude, I've had that Brett Booth cover for over a year.
All right.
But I realized there would never be a Death Raider 2 unless I get the campaign rolling.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I had to bring out the big guns, and the big guns, Brett Booth.
That's
Superstar
awesome.
Brett. So
yeah, I mean, I love his. It's funny. I've seen a lot of his art on socials. I don't know that I've actually read anything by him, but I've seen tons of his covers.
He is he started out like just wanting to be a Jim Lee guy, and he just kind of slowly over his career just kind of added some Jeffrey Scott Campbell, added a little this, added a little that, worked at different companies, and now he really is he's a superstar artist. I always told him, I'm like, dude, you should just follow Jim. Whatever Jim does a project, you follow it up. It'd be a beautiful consistency to the artwork. That the book, instead of it just completely dropping in sales, it would stay, maybe even do better, depending on what writer, also followed. He didn't want to be compared to Jim. But yeah. So there's a Brett Booth cover for Death Rider. You can get the Brett Booth cover in pencils. You can get the Brett Booth cover in inks. You can get the Brett Booth color in color, which I just got the first pass from the colorist. Very cool. I had a couple of little notes for him. He's going to get it back to me in time for Billy Tucci's live stream. You can get the color version. And then there's also, it's the black and white ink cover, but black and white interiors. So there's 4 different versions of Death Raider.
Wow.
With a Brett Booth cover.
So there's a black and white interiors as well?
Yes, there's actually 2 comic books that have black and white interiors. One is called Midnight, and then the other one is the Brett Booth black and white cover, black and white interiors.
Yeah. That's awesome. I gotta check this out because it's been a while since it looks like you keep adding stuff, which is great. Because I remember always thinking, like, because to be honest, it was only black and white art I saw when I first backed. Maybe this had some. But I was always like, this could look great as just a black and white book. So you do have a black and white version? Yes,
I do. A lot of people, I got that almost instantly feedback from Twitter. So I kind of, I do, before I built the campaign, I wish I just decided to do it in black and white. And to be honest, issue 2, as long as we get into the 30s with this issue, I'm doing issue 2 immediately. That is going to be black and white with a stretch goal to be able to sell a color version. But I'm not going to color another comic book again. I learned a lot, had a lot of fun doing this one, but the time it took while doing freelance on the side, it was half the month I did freelance work, which barely covered the bills. Then half the month I would, be moving along with the Death Raider. Then, I'd get the occasional email, hey, when's Death Raider coming out? And I just, that became, it was too stressful, going, oh man, I'm still in the middle of colors. Then it was, I'm in the middle of, like, I just know that this bad boy's been running for 2 years and I've gotten so much faster doing pencils and inks. I'm just like, let me write the story. Let me just do the black and white artwork and we'll go from there. We'll just, if the campaign, only does 20, like the second one does 20K, then it does 20K. It's black and white. Everybody who, wants to see the black and white, that's, that's just what I'll be. I'll be a black and white artist and just go from there.
Honestly, I don't really mind that. I mean, look, people say to only, and I say this, someone actually, Andy Smith told me, he's like, dude, you should just keep your comic in black and white. Like when I first showed off that art. But then people saw the colors and they're like, oh my God, I love the colors. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my colorist on, get him back on issue 2. I'd love to do a black and white version at some point down the line. But right now, I just want to get it done and out there. And my hope is that people like, because here's the thing, all the comics we grew up on, eventually they get artist editions, right? But they're not leaked as that. But your stuff was different because often I think it's what we see first. So because I saw yours first in black and white, I keep forgetting that Death Raider is a colored comic because I keep seeing, and I love the black and white. There's something about the almost like dark mechanical feel of this book that I really like.
Well, I appreciate it. Andy Smith at CrossGen would always look at me and go, "Oh, look at you designed a new character, another villain." And I'm like, "No, this one's a hero." And he goes, "Why do all your heroes look like villains?" And I'm like, "Because if my heroes look like villains, then my villains are really, really bad."
That's
that was, I always want towards the darker on that kind of stuff.
You know what? It's good you say that because I was thinking actually, issue 3 of my comics, so issue 2 is almost done. 3, is where I kind of actually finally introduced the team of Phenomenova as well as the full team of villains. And I was thinking I might want to do a villains cover. I'd love to get you to do that, honestly.
Oh, dude, that would be fun.
Because I was thinking about it. I was like, wait a minute. I wanted you to do a cover anyway because I've been wanting to work with you forever. And then I'm looking at Death Raider. I'm looking at my villains, and they're all tech-based, wearing black. And I'm like, this is too perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So,
and that's one thing I didn't do for Death Raider. I didn't do any villain covers. Like I realized like, I kept telling myself maybe I need to do a villain cover. But the villains, it really is the Death Raider origin story, and the villains take more of a front seat in the issue 2. And that's just kind of how I set up the book.
Yeah.
So.
You know what's funny too is I was always one of those people that's like, we only need one cover. What is these variants and whatever? And then when I'm in the creative seat, there's so many different angles I want to pitch my story and different cover ideas I get. And then also on top of that, I'm working with artists who go like read my script. Like I had literally a list of ideas for my issue 2 cover. My issue 1 cover, I knew from the beginning it was him holding the lightning. My issue 2 cover, I was like, I have a list of ideas, but I go, you know what? I tell my artist, let me give you freedom on this one. What do you think? He comes up with something cooler than, like I had a list of like 10 different cover ideas.
Yeah.
Cooler and more outlandish than anything I had thought of for issue. I'm like, you know what? There's a certain point where you got to swallow your pride as a writer and just go, you know what? They know better.
Well, also chat knows better. Chat
knows too. Yeah.
Yeah. Chat will throw out ideas. Chat told me to do, cheesecake cover. I imagine Chat probably wanted her almost completely naked.
And what gave you that impression?
But I pretty much, I'm like, well, I will do it like it's a cover pulled right out of the scene, because I always hated that in comics when they would pull a cover that had nothing to do with
it. I hate that so much. All my covers are related to the story. Like I had like one idea for a cheesecake cover for issue 2. I hired an artist who draws Vampirella, and he does the pinup that I told him to do that was still story related.
Yeah.
But then he does a thumbnail, but he goes, oh, also I do this for fun. And it was a thing that was objectively cooler, even if it wasn't that. And it didn't even have the character on it that I hired him for. And I'm like, I don't care. We're doing your version.
Yeah.
If people want like a stretch goal with a trading card of her looking hot, this chick, we'll do that.
There you
but
go.
It works. It almost has like a Terminator feel.
Yes, on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on purpose. Like when I was thinking of that cover, I really wanted her just because she does do that in the book, but I never had a big angled shot. And I'm like, well, I want to do a big angled shot, like it's very Terminator, and trying to do it a little creepy, maybe, just a little like a little drama. So that was the whole point.
There's a slight updraft in the building.
Well, of course there is.
Yeah, should have had her like over a vent.
Hey, who says there's not a fan blowing on her?
Why
is this fan on? What's happening? Who
cares? Don't worry about it. It's the same thing. I love that kind of stuff in comics. Where you're like, oh, that's one of the things that I like is you get to choose the snapshot in time. It's kind of like how everyone always looks like a movie star 100% of the time.
Yes.
Even in the heat of battle. And you know what? We like that.
Well, like, where's this dust and this smoke coming from? They're in a sterile, clean laboratory, and you've got smoke covering up, down.
That was one of the things I learned when I was a writer. Is I would look at the art and be like, "This is really cool." And earlier pages would be like, "Well, but that doesn't really make sense because they're in this environment." And then there was a scene where I was at a grave, and I was like, "Well, that doesn't really make sense. That it's like, even though it looks beautiful, that there's a sunset, even though the next day is scene is in the daytime." But like I saw it colored, and I'm like, I'll just add a caption box saying the next day. Honestly, it's so cool where it's like, sometimes you got to just go, "No, it's cool."
You got to remember the coolest factor when it comes to comic books, because it's visual.
Yeah.
Coolness factor wins almost every time.
Yeah.
You can look at the artists like some of those British guys that just draw, characters straight up and down. They're not very heroic. And you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
That art might work for those stories, but the fun superhero stuff that I like, that I read, no, you got to break those rules. You got to break those rules.
Marcus, I have a huge list of people to work with. That's why I tell you guys, if the more stretch goals I can get, the more trading cards and mini prints, whatever. I'd love to keep hiring people for color covers and whatever. Marcus, keep reminding me. Marcus, he's got like a Ramita kind of style, which I love. And it's one of the things, and I posted about it. Apparently, I got some backlash and people reading things I didn't say, but I was like, I love Jim Lee. I was like, but not everyone needs to. Jim Lee is like my favorite artist, by the way. Like I literally, like 10 days before I tweet this out, I'm like, I'm reading Extinction Agenda for the first time, and I'm posting pages like, "This is awesome." And then later, I'm posting about how, I also, while I like Jim Lee, I also like those Mazzucchelli pages, where he does like a million little actions. And I'm like, well, I love the Jim Lee stuff, but I also feel like everyone is afraid to do because I don't see that in a lot of modern comics. I don't see those like Dark Knight Returns or those Born Again kind of like a million panels.
It's because there's no money in it. There's no royalties left.
Yeah.
The royalties turned into the art sales. So what are you going to pay for a 16 panel page versus a 3-panel page?
Is that what it is? It's what
honestly, yes. Now Todd McFarlane came along and said, "Hey, this writer, he needs 12 panels to write this sequence." He's like, "I can do it in 2, one big splash and one small panel." So that's also Todd McFarlane's philosophy. It can get a little tiresome after a while. Even while Todd McFarlane was doing that in Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man, Dale Keown actually would add panels in his Incredible Hulk run. Yeah, Peter David said that a lot of times he was writing, because he loved Dale's stuff so much, he was writing 3 and 4 panel pages, and Dale would add like another 4 or 5 panels because that's just how Dale saw it.
God bless Dale. God bless Dale Keown. I need to read. So I've been trying to catch up on the old stuff while also working on, because you guys grew up with that. I'm trying to catch up on all of that. And like one of my, I'm almost done with Claremont's, I want to finish like Perez, Wolfman, Teen Titans. I want to start Peter David's Hulk. That's on my list. Like because Hulk the End is a masterpiece. And I'm like, I want to read that whole, era. I want to do, what else did I want to do? Like all 90s Batman is on my list. I have just like a bunch. I want to finish Stan Lee's Spider-Man. I never read much Fantastic Four. Everyone says that the original 100 or so issues is like one of the best runs.
And, yeah, I've never even looked at those.
Really?
No,
no. What are your favorites then?
I follow artists. I read the John Byrne's Fantastic Four. I read Walt Simonson's Fantastic Four. I don't look at the early stuff looks big and clunky to me. I can look at it and I can understand the dynamic of like Kirby and stuff, but and the crazy, the crazy machinery and where he'd pull back super, super far and all it is this big giant landscape of tech and all this cool stuff. But I still don't care. When I was a kid, that stuff hurt my eyes and I didn't know why. Like when Jack Kirby did superpowers for DC, I liked all the bright colored DC characters, but I wondered why the artwork kind of gave me a headache. I didn't really, artwork didn't jump out to me like some guys were better than others until Mike Zeck's Punisher miniseries came out.
Oh, that miniseries
and then
is so good.
It ends so poorly.
You
Mike
think
Zeck
so?
doesn't do the last issue.
Oh, who does the hang on, let me see. I
It's
have
a-
it here. Who
It's a
did
guy
it?
who was a storyboard artist, so he did it fast. He had to do it fast. I mean, he's talented. He's just not Mike Zeck spending 2 or 3 months on a issue.
Is that how long he spent? I could see it.
I don't know how long he spent, but it looks like he spent quite a while on the first few issues.
It looks like so layouts and finishes. Mike Vosberg and then John Beatty did most. Well, so to me, it doesn't. I mean, because I'm taking a look at it, I actually like. You could see that it's not Zeck, I guess, but like
you could see that
the
they
Beatty,
told
though.
him to try to do Zeck, and then you had Beatty inking it.
Well, Beatty had inked the whole thing, so it looks similar enough to me. But I get it. I still love it. I love the ending scene though. Like it's very memorable where she's like, please, like help me in the car. And he's just like, no. And then he walks away. I love that. Yeah, I mean, it just, I don't know. Like I can appreciate artists, but at the end of the day, I'm not one and I'm never going to be one because I don't have the patience or the talent. And it's also like, I know so many artists that are looking for work and I'm like, do I even want to be an artist? It's like, no, I don't because I like to write. It's hard enough being a writer.
Yeah.
You know, because at the end of the day, everyone's looking to hire an artist to bring their written ideas to life. No one's looking for a well, some people are. I think I wish more people were, but you know.
Well, it's easier to hire a foreign artist than it is to hire a foreign writer. You can't hire a foreign writer to write your comic book.
Yeah.
It won't work. The translations and the culture, it's not going to work. But it's pretty easy to hire a foreign artist to do your project. So there always is going to be that specific demand for writers. Once you establish yourself, you're not as replaceable.
Yeah, which is why I'm so excited to get to like write as many genres as I can to say, hey, I can do it. I can do it all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but one of the things that I like about about working, I will say I refused, and this goes down to colorists. I've refused to hire artists that aren't at least willing to take a phone call. Now there have been ones that I didn't, like for example, my art contest winner guy did trading card, Brett Barkley. We were able to just talk over messages, but I generally, if I can't communicate with someone, I'll be explaining something and they'll miss the nuances. If they're going through a translator, they'll miss the nuances of what I'm saying. And then the script will come back and I'll be like, well, yeah, like it's clear they drew kind of what I said, though a little off, but they won't understand the reason for why I wrote it the way I did. And,
our old boss Tom had that problem. He anytime he dealt with a foreign artist, he'd have that problem. Stuff was supposed to be going to the left, and it would be going to the right.
Yeah,
it's a lot of stuff that didn't really make sense because of the translations.
Yeah, and it's not like necessarily on them, but like for example, I remember, I don't want to get too into it because it's business, but there was a time where I'm like, this character, it seems like a small thing, but it's from a storytelling standpoint, you'd understand why it's a lot. Where it's a car driving out into the desert, and it was like shot in a way where it was like them going toward the camera, and I was like, well, the point is that I'm showing off the vast land, and if you're just showing the close up of the car, yeah, you are drawing what I told you, but the reasoning behind it is being missed, because it's like, with Westerns, they're always going out into the open land, and the point is to show how small you are in the land.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that stuff is always tough, but it's another thing too, because I come from a film background where I like to direct, and it was one of those things where I have to learn to kind of let the artist go, dude.
The artist is the director.
Yeah, dude, I do my directing. My artist and we found a good flow. Like I used to nitpick a bit more in the beginning, and now I'm kind of getting to a part where we understand each other better. And now there are parts where I just write dialogue and I just say panels, and I'm like, all right, you got this. And then he does. And I'll cut stuff up to fit his visuals. Is one of the things I like. Is sometimes, that's what I'll say. If you want to have ultimate control over every aspect of your project, then learn to draw. Otherwise, sometimes you need to shut up. As one of the things I learned.
It's true. Well, learn to do everything.
Yeah,
whether you want to or not. That's my edict. Is I have to do everything.
Yeah, I learned to humble myself, because I was like, I want the lettering to be this. And I'm like, all right, hold on. And then I'd ask my letterer, he'd be like, well, no, I did this for this reason. I'll go, okay, that actually makes more sense than what I was thinking. And it's one of the things that you realize, maybe I'm hiring these people because they're smarter than me.
because
Maybe
they know the craft.
yeah,
Yes.
and I because I didn't take the time to, maybe it's best I learn. You know, but sometimes I am right. 1 out of 10 times, but you know.
The thing about comic books, dude, it's even though it's such a weird low budget compared to everything else, you know, scraping the bottom of the budget, like even all the companies think, well, we'll have a comic book company because it'll be easy to mine the stories and it's the cheapest way to have
Yeah.
people write and create for us, you know, versus animation or character concepts and all that kind of stuff. Everybody else charges a lot more. Everybody, you still have to know your shit.
Yeah,
You
you
can't
still have to be as talented.
you can't just go, oh well, I have a lettering program, let me letter. You're like,
No.
no, dude, you better know comic books. You better actually give a shit about lettering. You better pay attention to all this stuff. Same with coloring, same with penciling, same with inking. They cheat more and more when it comes to the inking side. But yeah. Oh, I mean, you can see it. I look at tons of comic books. I look at tons of comic books and go, wow, that's amazing art. And I see that the penciler decided he doesn't want to work as hard. He's inking himself. It looks like shit. And then he has the colors doing all the heavy lifting. And that's becoming more and more transparent every day. You know, some people can say it's an anime manga influence, but it's a lazy penciler influence is what it comes down to. They, you know, instead of visualizing a cool energy effect, they just draw an outline
Yeah.
and then have the colors do all the cool energy stuff.
That's what I learned this weekend, like about Todd's art. And it doesn't make me, but it's apparently like because Todd is very frank about how he's able to hit deadlines. And he was like, "Yeah, I just use stuff with the cape." And I'm looking at his covers, like that iconic Batman cover, and like, I guess he didn't really draw that much. He just kind of, but it doesn't matter because it's a striking visual. And I'm going back and I'm looking at some of the stuff Todd did, and I'm like, oh, I can see the shortcuts.
That's why I quit buying Spawn after like issue 13. I'm like,
what was it the lack of story?
It's like, what is this? It's Spawn sitting in an alleyway and it's all cape. It's his head and his cape and his background artist drawing everything. I couldn't take it.
I read the first issue of Spawn. It was like they did those image first. And I remember like, cause I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I've heard it. And I remember reading that and I was going, I mean, that was okay.
Well, my favorite part of Todd was not only his different versions of the Marvel characters and supervillains in Spider-Man, but it was the cartoony faces. And Spawn's face is all burned up, so you don't get to see cartoony faces by Todd anymore. You get to see Al's ex-wife with a shitty haircut, with this weird lesbian short haircut that he gave her. It was just, the whole thing was just like, oh, this is everything that I liked about Todd McFarlane was not in Spawn. So by like, you know, even though Todd McFarlane's one of my favorite artists, by like issue like 12 or 13, I'm like, I'm done. And even having Greg Capullo come on, I just couldn't, you know, it was still Todd's fingerprints are all over it because it's his book. And I bought the toys, but I didn't buy the comic book. Yeah. So Death Raider ended up being 72 pages of glorious sci-fi action. We get to see him when he's in Team Core as a soldier, killing terrorists. Then we get to see the more sci-fi elements after he loses his legs. He gains alien knowledge. He gains some mysterious powers. He's on the run. He builds the Death Raider armor. He fights robots. It culminates because of the sequence, and I've shared most of the pages. When he's still Team Core, he gets ambushed by some mercenaries. Well, his team dies. He loses his legs. The mercenaries, because of alien intervention and other circumstances, they end up being the Reapers, who are a team of killer cyborgs that now are chasing after Death Raider. And so that's pretty much the culmination of the story, is a big fight action sequence where Death Raider and the Reapers are going at it. With Anna's right there. She's a co-star. She's right there fighting along too. You know, she's like his Robin to Batman. So
Gotcha. That's really cool. I like that. So you what were your biggest inspirations for Death Raider?
I wanted a skull mask because I always thought the skull on Ghost Rider was cool. I like capes, but it's Iron Man meets Wolverine. It really is. I'm a fan of the like SEAL Team TV shows, so I wanted to do a type of soldier story, machine gun stuff, but I also wanted to do a lot of sci-fi superhero stuff because in the end, I am a Hulk smash type of comic book reader. It's why it's one of the reasons I'm here. Crowdfunding, because Marvel and DC decided that they want to write Hulk drinking coffee, and I want to see Hulk smashing shit.
Yeah.
Obviously I want a story, the reason why he's smashing shit.
Yeah.
But I don't want him sitting around pondering life like, dude, regular life, I can stare at a friggin' mirror and I can look at regular life. Who wants that? Comic books are supposed to be a distraction.
Right.
So I want super in my superheroes. I want a $400 million budget in my stories. I want giant mechs and giant spaceships over cities and explosions and people dying and like literally my character. Nobody steps up to be a hero. Everybody's trying to fucking survive. Death Raider's trying to survive. That's why he builds the armor. That's why he's doing what he's doing. Anna is getting ready she would get thrown in prison if she doesn't help Death Raider. She gets blackmailed into helping Death Raider. So she's trying to survive. It's these characters that have their skills and they're not terrible people. But this is about survival. And that's really the crux of the story. Dude, they're just doing what they can to survive, and it happens they're going against some really awful people and awful entities.
So it's basically they're ambushed, and I'm sorry, I'm just making sure I understand.
Yeah, well, there's a connection. There's a connection when Death Raider's real name is Sergeant Brody Wilson. When the event where he loses his legs and he gets alien technology embedded into his head. Alien technology also gets embedded into one of the mercs because of the explosion. Psy, the cyborg, pretty clever name right there. She's a cyborg, so I named her Psy, S-Y. She can manipulate alien technology, the Rate Core alien technology. She shouldn't be able to, but she can. Death Raider has more of the mental capacity from the technology. He's, the technology is accessing his brain, so he he can't manipulate technology, but he's building technology that he shouldn't be able to build. He's doing impossible shit with technology, but because they're connected, Psy can track him down.
Gotcha.
And she and her team, the Reapers, track down Death Raider and Anna because they're in the hiding because he's still healing. He's a guy in a wheelchair. He's got to figure out what the F he's going to do. Anna makes a joke and says, "Oh, you're so smart now. Why are you still rolling around in a wheelchair?" And that's when he starts building out the Death Raider armor.
That's awesome. I love well, for a few things. First of all, so you have a character named Psy. Have you talked to Cyborg Valkyrie Psy yet?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so that's someone who has a channel. I was wondering if you're doing your last rounds. I don't know. They're pretty busy, but they're friends of mine, Shay and Psy. I'd get on there. Did I send you that spreadsheet I made of shows to get on?
You did, and then it just became. I asked for help in the green room, pushing my book at the last week because I really didn't like. I mean, I just didn't feel like if I start saying, "Hey, the closeout's in 2 weeks," and I start doing all the shows, I didn't know if it would really connect with people. Like, oh, hey, 2 weeks, like literally 2 weeks. If you tell me something, hey, this happens in 2 weeks. 2 weeks go by, and I'm like week 3. I'm like, hey, wasn't there a closeout?
Yeah, that happened. That's why I started promoting. I launched my book, ended up launching in April. I was planning on launching February. There's a reason I started promoting in like July. Is because I was building a mailing list in like late July, early August of last year's because I knew, you have to see something a million times, and even then, that might not be enough.
Yeah, so I did the big push. I wanted a week out. I wanted to still freshen everybody's brain when I did shows, and I quickly realized just doing 2 or 3 shows a day, that is the day. And I would be exhausted by the end of the day. Like I did that. Like just trying to do little stuff, like getting the campaign, getting the Brett Booth pencils up on the campaign on Monday, and then doing Kings, and then Tuesday having to ink the Death Raider cover, and then doing a bunch of shows on Tuesday, and then doing a bunch of shows on Wednesdays. I still have it because you sent me an image with it. I wasn't even able to contact anybody. I was just like, this is just like when I want to talk about comics in a couple of months, I got to contact these people because
I get it.
You only could push so much stuff on on so many people. So
I get it.
It's a time thing. It's, I mean, you only could do so many shows.
Yeah. I was just literally, as I was filling up my post-it for the day, I'm like, I'm already on row 2 of my post-it with stuff I keep adding today. I'm like, oh, I got to make my to-do list for November. I have to launch. Suddenly realize launching next month. It's just the amount of, one thing I will say, the amount of, you were on 3 streams yesterday and picked up 15 back. See, that's something. You never know. Like, I'll tell you this. Like, I've been on streams where I have a big audience and I've gotten like 2 backers or 1 or 0. And then I've been on, there was one show I was on that I'd never been on, people I had never really interacted before. And I got like 5 backers on that show. And I, obviously, you're the name. So multiply that by Death Raider, and what, 20 years of DC Comics. I mean, that's, you never know. Like, and it's also those smaller channels that are nobody channels. If you take, like, obviously, you only have so many hours in the day, but, man, those smaller channels, they'll like really, especially be like, thank you so much for taking the time. And, even if they don't always back, they'll be like promoting the hell out of you. That's one of the things that I like a lot is, you never know, really. You really, sometimes you catch someone in the right mood. Like, for example, like I'm in like a horror movie mood right now. And then or like, you never know, someone might just be in a sci-fi phase. And maybe last time they saw your book, the last 5 times they were like, whatever. And then suddenly they just watched something that reminded them of Death Raider. And now they're like, oh my God, you never know. You really never know.
I did Narwhal's channel early on and picked up 8 backers.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think that was everybody who was watching. I think there's 12 people watching.
You never know.
And 8 of them backed my book. So, and that was, more than I would get on a normal King's night. So, or a couple of weeks of Kings. So I'm going to be on John's Long Box Friday.
Yeah. John, he's great. You really never know. And then what always happens, and I'm preparing you for it, is because I've been one of those people, one of those backers, like I've been wanting back Aaron's Lepresti's books forever, and it's like I still haven't, but every time, like I literally made like my 12th post that probably reminded me to back it, and because everyone tells me his books are just the best, and you know what happens every time you close out, like immediately after close out Phenomenova, when can I get the book? I'm like, man, I was campaigning for like the last 5 months.
Everybody says that.
Is Narwhal doing okay? He's doing, I mean, last time I talked to him, he seems good, man. He's working with Mark Millar, so can't be doing too bad.
No, yeah. Well, hopefully it was more than just like an 8-page story or something. Hopefully,
either way, I mean, that alone, I hate to be one of those people that's like, it's exposure, but I mean, that's send me the link, Ellie. Pontificators of the smallest audience last night picked up the most, but it really, like, I'm telling you, and I'm by no means an expert. There is no exact science to it, man. There really isn't.
No.
Like, there are streams I've been on with, like, I was on Cecil's stream with 1,000 people. I picked up like 2 backers. Mm-hmm. Then I was on Friday nights. I don't know if you've been on that show.
No.
I picked up I raised like hundreds that night, if I remember correctly. Like, you really never know.
When Eric July would respond to me, I would always get a couple of backers, like 2 or 3 backers.
Yeah.
Now he doesn't respond to me. I think it must be all the more drama and fighting. So you
think so? I don't know. I mean,
dude, I met him. I went to remember.
I remember because you turned around and you disappeared.
5 minutes. I had a 5-minute conversation with Eric July, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm going to be working for Eric July. Nothing ever happened, which honestly, that's comic books. Things don't have you.
That's everything. That's
we
film,
all want like, oh, hey, I just talked to this guy. I'm going to be working for him in a week.
Yeah.
2 years later, that you get a phone call. So I understand that after all the decades I've been in comic books, but the no response on Twitter always just goes, oh man, that's kind of a bummer.
Well, it happens, but it happens,
Well, there's so much fighting. There's so much fighting.
Yeah, but you never get involved, so I don't.
No, I don't. Well, I don't, dude. Most of the time, I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about.
That's a good thing. Yeah, often people will send me stuff. I'll be like, "What?" They'll be like, "Vaughn, did you hear about this?" I'm like, "No." Do I want to?
Someone's complaining about someone's comic book, and I'm just like,
"Oh, I'm like, is it good?" Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
Can I get a copy? Yeah.
like I used to. DC would send me all of their books, and I would literally be throwing away some of the books. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with these Vertigo books. I know the fans at cons who come to my table are superhero fans. I can give away some of these superhero comics, but the Vertigo, some of it's adult and stuff. I'm like, I can't just give this stuff to kids. I would just take, every month, like sometimes it'd be 20 Vertigo books in a box and just be like garbage.
Yeah. Do you know what you could do? You could be like, buy a print off the table, pick something from this box here.
Well, I was already doing that.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I was already doing that with the trade paperbacks because DC was sending me, dude. It was so much fun.
You know what I
would get 2 giant boxes. Everything that DC published, they would send to me. So all their trades, all their comics, it was fun.
You know what I'm looking at, Rob? Is I'm looking at the first book. So for those of you that don't know the lore, so Rob and I, Rob and I go back. So basically, it was like my first job in comics was I got a job. It was like, I think I remember I was initially assistant editor, and then they just took out assistant and then just add me as like an editor. I'm like, okay, well, either way, I don't really care. I'm an editor on a book. That was great. And I was like, that's awesome. And I remember, actually, funny enough, I pitched what was then called The Vortex, then became Living Legends, then became Phenomenova. I pitched that to Rob, I remember, on the phone. And, Rob gave me, I remember, and I'm actually glad it was a rejection because it was like, I wasn't ready at that time, The fact that anyone took the time to hear me out was great. I remember Rob was like, I remember one of the things you said, you were like, you're pitching this like a car. Just tell me the story. I think it was either you or Tom that said that. One of you guys said that.
I think Tom said that.
It was Tom.
Like, you're trying to sell us. You don't need to sell us.
Yeah, it's like Vaughn. It was him because he's like, Vaughn, I've known you for like a year or whatever. Just tell me the story. You don't need to.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. You were trying to hype us, and we're like, we aren't here to be hyped. just tell us your idea. Yeah. Well, dude, especially all the things that have happened. Your book could have been like on issue 3. Yeah. And then just be on pause right now.
Yeah. No,
so no one would ever see it.
And things worked out the way they did. And that's it. And
plus you have full control.
Yeah, I have full control. Well, I was always going to make sure that I did. But
dude, I pitched Raider.
Yeah, you pitched Raider. Yeah.
And honestly, it was just a half drawn sketch because I expected, Mel Ruby's going to want to do designs on it because I wanted to create a character that Mel and I could work on at Phenom Comics that would be really fun to work on. I'm like, I've never seen Mel do like a real Batman type character, so I was trying to create. So I created Raider, which was very Moon Knight, very Moon Knight with a grenade launcher is really what I was thinking. So instead, Tom said no, and then I finished my projects at Phenom, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? And then I'm like, I'm just staring at that half-finished Raider drawing, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's try to figure something. Let's turn this into something. And now here we are. Here's the campaign. It's really funny that both of us pitched ideas to Tom at Phenom Comics, and we're both now crowdfunding those projects that he said no to.
Yeah. But it was a great experience, for me. The book was mostly done. Yeah, it was Lord Lightning was the name of my character, which gets made reference in the book actually as a rejected name because my main character, because everyone, the whole panel laughed at me when I said that name on stream. So I came up with a new one. But I remember, yeah, Hunter Ninja Bear. I remember seeing it. Mel I hadn't heard of before. I don't think I'd heard either of you by name, but I mentioned, oh, we're working with Rob Hunter. I remember looking up your name and going, oh, okay, I've seen some of this. But so I remember, like, before the phone call, they're like, oh, we're gonna be with Rob Hunter. And so before I get on the call with you, I'm like looking up your work. I'm like, do I know anything? But yeah,
I did yell at you, but I wasn't patient with you, and I did leave the conversation.
Oh, did you? I didn't know that. I don't remember. I don't blame you. I'm very ADHD. You're like, who is this? Why are we even entertaining this peasant?
Well, you pitched us
three
Kid
ideas.
Flash. You pitched us Kid Flash, and then you kept pitching us.
Well, I had backups in case I had backups.
Yeah, but they were very much like.
But you like to remember what I remember. You liked the World War III superhero prequel.
I did like that.
Which I do still intend to do. It's the backdrop for my book.
I don't think Tom liked it that I said I liked that because I had shot down a bunch of his pitches to me too.
Oh, really?
Well, Tom has he's a very talented, generous man.
Oh yeah.
But Tom had the unfortunate circumstances of it seemed like everything he pitched was already a Top Cow project that had come out.
Oh,
so he would pitch stuff, and I'm like, that's a lot like a Top Cow book that came out like 5 years ago. And he'd be like, wait, what? And then he'd pitch something else. And I'm like, that also was a Top Cow book that made it like 6 issues before it got canceled. And he'd be like, oh, damn it. So when he sent me the Hunter Ninja Bear screenplay, and I'm just like looking at it, and I was just like, oh, and he said, who could write it, turn it into a comic book? I was just like, dude, that's Chuck Dixon all day long.
All day, yeah.
All day long. That's Chuck Dixon. Chuck Dixon's the guy for this. Because I worked with Chuck at CrossGen, and I knew the things that Chuck liked to write, and I know all the things that Chuck doesn't want to just do superhero shit. He wants to do all of every all the different stuff. And at the time I had just read Chuck Dixon's Bad Times, the first 2 novels that he had written. So I knew that Chuck would be totally into Hunter Ninja Bear. And now he's busy. His agent's pitching all of his properties to Hollywood because Vaughn Coleman is officially a movie with Jason.
That's good.
Statham.
Well, that's good. I hope Hunter Ninja Bear takes off. That would be awesome, man. I really do. It'd be great for us too. We'd be like, hey, we worked on that. I mean, you more so than me. I'll just be like, yeah, I gave feedback.
Dude, I have all the artwork.
Oh yeah, so you're good. You're good.
I have 200 and some pages of Hunter Ninja Bear because Mel penciled it on the computer. So the only artwork it's all in at my house. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, with me, what I do, because people be like, "Oh, you were involved. What'd you do?" I'd be like, "Well, I just kind of like gave them notes." But it was cool. I'd be like, it was cool for me. I didn't care any involvement I'd take. I'd be like, that one scene of them training was my idea.
Well, didn't you also did you mention to Tom that you're like, hey, I'm getting a little confused with all these characters?
Yeah.
Tom and Mel went back and added specific hats.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like this guy will have a bearskin hat. This guy has because it. And I remember when I heard that, I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea to just because I would lose track of who the characters were, but I'm just inking them. So I'm just like, oh, this is just some guy with a mustache and a beard. And that's how I would ink it. So
yeah, well, because I remember that's interesting you hear that because I remember because one of the things I'm actually happy about, and maybe I should do this with more comics, but you know how production deadlines are and wanting to get stuff out, is I was brought on so late, and I'm glad I was because it gave me a fresh perspective. I was given given Chuck did this. I didn't even know my official job title was an editor. They were like, Vaughn, just read this and give us your thoughts. We'll talk on the phone and write some notes, and that's all I did. And I would be like, Yeah, there's a lot of characters here. They all look cool, but I didn't know, who they were. Maybe you could distinguish them more. Like I would give notes like that. I'd be like, oh, they're on a boat, and then she's a ninja later. Maybe just have like a training montage. It was stuff like that,
It's
that I would
stuff.
just.
It's someone who wasn't knee deep into the project, who could just look with fresh eyes and go, "Hey, I'm confused about this."
Yeah.
Because we added some double page spreads and stuff to help clarify certain things too. I remember that we went back into that book, and there was probably like maybe, I don't remember exactly, between 4 and 8 pages that were added just in little places where we thought it would help with the storytelling. Now, Violent Comics says death of any pitch is previous idea that wasn't successful.
Is that true?
I don't.
Or he's asking as a question. He's asking.
Yeah, I don't understand what he's asking.
He's saying because basically he was saying that because my other ideas weren't great, that suddenly that meant that were my other ideas tainted. Like, I guess I don't know. Maybe clarify. That's how I'm interpreting what he's saying. Is that because my first idea was a hit, that maybe that poisoned my next two in the pipeline?
Well, I think what he was trying to say is that a bad idea is a bad idea. Doesn't mean it's shit. It just means you got to fix it. You got to work it a little better. I think maybe.
Let's see. I was referring to previous creative project. Okay. Yeah, I guess
referring to previous create project.
Maybe he's saying that like I don't know. But I know I remember like getting, because I just give my notes, and then I remember seeing, because you guys were all professionals and I was kind of kept at arm's length, which is fun.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy to be excited because I don't know. They also didn't. I remember even at one point I was like, oh, I want to read out to Chuck. And he's like, don't tell Chuck, it's some honor to me. He knows. And I was like, okay. Like I was basically told, don't fanboy out. So I was kept at arm's length, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But I remember like getting them back after months, and I was like, oh my God, they actually listened to some of my feedback had value. That's awesome. Because I was just giving my thoughts, like take it or leave it, obviously. And it was another thing that was in the book because of me was basically I was confused. I go, I just don't get what the title, like, why is it just Hunter Ninja Bear? He goes, it's like rock, paper, scissors. And he was like, you've never heard that? And apparently it was a thing. I never knew.
That's a generational age thing.
I guess so. Because I didn't know that, because I was like, what? And he goes, I go, maybe you should explain that somewhere. And he goes, okay, I'll add a page at the beginning. And he writes out this whole page to prelude the book. And I was like, well, I go, yeah, maybe you should add something like that at the beginning, so that way the people who don't know that, like myself, are reading the whole book with that context of Hunter beats Bear, Ninja beats Hunter, Bear beats Ninja. Like, now that I knew that and I reread, I was like, okay, now I see where they're going. So that was my
Can you highlight Violent Comics next?
Yeah. Well, anyone you're pitching is going to think of any successful, unsuccessful comic projects when they think about what you're pitching. That's true.
Oh, in comic books, it doesn't fucking matter.
Oh, okay.
Honestly,
maybe it's not true.
editors will keep hiring the same shitty writers again and again and again until their boss tells them not to. Comic books nowadays are micromanaged from the top down. So you literally, if the editor in chief says, hey, keep this guy busy, the editors will just keep him busy. It won't success or value. The editors hope those successes, but in the great, okay, this is kind of a circular thought, but did you guys hear about how they talked to the president of Marvel and they asked him about sales being down, and he says sales aren't down. Now, from his perspective, he's not thinking Amazing Spider-Man used to sell 200,000 copies and now it sells 75,000 copies. He looks at it and says, we are selling each year 10 million copies of comic books. They just sell more of other stuff. They just sell more titles of shit. To them, he's just talking about the complete print run of
everything.
Yes. So it doesn't matter to him from the president's perspective, especially if he gets some kind of weird bonus on every issue or whatever. He doesn't care. Last year they sold 10 million copies. It doesn't matter if, back in the day, 10 million copies. Well, 5 million of those were Jim Lee's X-Men #1. The guys at the top don't care about that kind of thing.
So even if it's like really spread out, okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Like you eventually, because honestly, the more you spread it out, that means more cost. But the
Yeah.
guy at the top, he can just take the numbers he wants to talk about and not talk about, he never talks about the expense of those 10 million copies versus if he just had one team like Jim Lee who sold 10 million copies. Like, there's a big difference. There's a big difference in cost. 200 people working for you or 4 guys.
Yeah, it's also like one guy buying 5 X books versus 5 people buying 1 X book, right?
Exactly. But that's how they look at it for their job. As long as they keep getting paid every week or every 2 weeks, the editors, their bosses, they don't care as long as they have a job. They're just thinking about their job and keeping it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to with Marvel and DC, if the boss says, here's the agenda, and that's Disney and corporate saying inclusivity and diversity and hire these writers because the editor in chief said hire these writers.
Yeah.
That their job is to put those writers in the position and make sure the deadlines are met. And that's it. It doesn't matter whether they wrote 4 shitty comic books or 4 shitty titles. Their boss told them, keep this guy busy. And
I think that's why, because obviously we didn't work like that at Phenom Comics. I think that's part of why I was, because I went to film school with Tom's son. That's how we know each other. And, my film was voted for the class to be screened to represent my class. And he had watched it. And I guess he liked what I did. So he felt like I could offer something creatively. Right. And I was hired for creative reasons. I didn't have any business knowledge. I didn't know about deadlines. I was just, hey, Vaughn, let's get your thoughts on this and how you feel about it. And I think that's honestly an aspect of editors that's often mixed. Randy Howell saying editors are traffic managers now.
Yes.
And I think that's, listen, maybe I'm biased because I'm not reading a ton of modern stuff, but you look at who the editors were on like Claremont's run, right? You had Ann Nesenti, great writer. You had Louise Simonson, great writer. You had Jim Shooter, great writer who could also draw, right? You had, or even Frank Miller's Jet of Run. Who was the editor? It was Denny O'Neil, or like Chuck's editor on Batman, Denny O'Neil. Like these were people that you wanted to take creative advice from. And I'm sure they understood the business, but or like, let's look at who's the editor at the start of Claremont's run. I think Marv Wolfman actually was.
It's true. Because you could be a fantastic writer and you could pitch 20 ideas. 10 of them are great and 10 of them are shit.
Yeah.
A good editor says, I really like these 10 ideas.
Yeah, let's cut this.
And there goes that's your next year. Your next year is taking those ideas that you and your editor could work on and figure out. Nowadays, it's like I need a script for the penciler in a week. And I've heard that
what are we saying?
Randy just said something, so I lost track. Show everyone the T-shirt and the company motto on the.
Where's that?
Go to the T-shirt on the campaign.
Oh shit!
Vaughn has control of that, so
where's the bottom?
Right there. Can you click on it or not?
I could. What do you mean click on it?
Yeah, see, you can't click on anything. You can't enlarge anything.
I could just zoom in.
Oh, can you zoom?
Yeah. But I was looking, I didn't realize this until I'm looking back that I totally forgot that Marv freaking Wolfman. This is even pre New Teen Titans. So I wonder if there was bleed over then, if he took any of his inspiration for working on X-Men and brought it to Teen Titans. I didn't even draw that connection. But I mean, that's my point, though, is
the Death Raider T-shirt has around the edges of that hex design, it says time to fuck shit up, because that's his catchphrase that we came up with early on, and I tend to forget about that. So that is
like I actually
remember that. I gotta remember that when I'm pushing Death Raider more. It's time to fuck shit up.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But I remember I actually have to read my editor's work for Phenomenova. But my point is that, which I feel bad about, because I had free samples. I was like, I'll read it. And then my to read pile was so big. But his stuff was so good because I wanted someone with more experience than me who could that's why I'm so blessed to have so many, pros that I could like. Even then, I'll ask you something sometime. I'll ask Graham Nolan something. I'll ask people that are more talented than me And I'm obviously my own publisher. And that's one thing I will say to younger creators or creators that don't, even if you do know your stuff, bring someone on to keep you in check, man. Like bring someone on who is, you know, especially if you're younger. Or again,
Well,
editor
that's what Marvel and DC used to do.
Archie Goodwin. That's another editor. Chris
Yeah,
Claremont
editors
had.
would keep those writers in check. They
Like,
would,
'cause-
they, you know.
Yeah.
Now I think the writers are told, "Hey, here's the event coming up. You have to figure out what B is. Here's the characters need to go from A to C. You figure out B." And
Yeah.
it's an editor who doesn't really give a shit about the story and probably terrible ideas.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this. I mean, because Chris, let's be honest, like X-Men was a nothing title that no one cared about. Chris is not a super well-known writer. And the reason why, and that's why you had people for like years. It wasn't until like late in his run when he was like probably more experienced than his. I mean, I don't know what Bob Harris did, but like, you know, Louise Simonson was more experienced and older than Chris, right? You had people that that were more experienced than him, even when he was at like the top title. And I think that, and I'm no expert on the comics industry, obviously, but you know, you look generally, if there's a strong story, there's generally a strong editor behind it.
Well, yeah, Uncanny X-Men, it was, you know, it was slowly building that building.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of great writers, a lot of great editors, and a lot of great artists who then Jim Lee got to take advantage of the business peaking, Uncanny X-Men peaking, and you know, we remember the guy at the top. We don't remember everyone else who built the pyramid. We just remember the guy at the top saying, you know, look at what I did. Jim Lee did a great job finishing the pyramid.
Yeah.
Uncanny X-Men. But, you know, there's a lot of people that were involved before him.
Yeah, which is what Violent Comics, by the way, you got, how are you not going to mention the writers and editors? The disrespect of Violent Comics. No, but, you know, Joe Sontag and I were having a back and forth. He's like, X-Men #1 sold 1 million because of Jim Lee's art. And I'm like, in part, but I'm like, why would anyone have cared about X-Men #1 if it was Jim Lee's art? Why didn't Punisher War Journal get those numbers? Why didn't Alpha Flight get those numbers? And I was like,
well,
dude,
that's a little different. Jim Lee was still brand new.
I guess
he kind of sucked. You know, when he was on Alpha Flight, he did good tech. Like the coolest character on Alpha Flight was his box.
Yeah.
The robot character guy, the guy that could control the.
To be fair, I haven't read it, but my
yeah, he like the people, you could see that he was influenced by Jim Lee, but the people were kind of stiff and looked kind of funny.
Gotcha.
But his you were like, what? All of his tech looked way better than his people. I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a process, and then he got better. He even said that Punisher was all about being able to focus on one character and learning shadows and being able to do storytelling and atmosphere better. And you can see that a lot of that type of atmosphere that he did in Punisher really worked out well on Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of, I mean, getting the one character thing, even though it's different, you know, that's why, even though I'm doing a superhero team book, I spend 2 issues, like a giant size issue, and then my next issue building up one character, and then the background characters. And then issue 3 is finally where I get to go, okay, we have a full team of heroes, a full team of villains, is because I wanted to show that I could kind of do this. If I can, I remember actually, Rob, I think it was you, Rob, actually, it was you or Tom that told me, okay, no. Focus on one character. Stop giving me whole teams. And I was like,
oh, yeah.
And then you still didn't like the character.
Well, it's because, here's, I told you that because
it sounded like
you will notice that in comic books, shitty writers will come up with all these stupid characters.
Yeah.
Because they don't know they don't have the confidence to say, here's a couple of characters, I'm going to write them well. And instead they go, here's 12 characters in the team. I hope someone will like a couple.
Yeah.
You know, instead of, and then you're just like, well, they don't develop anybody. It's a bunch of people standing around, you know, and that's, well, who's that writer? There's a writer. He's a very strong technical writer, but I don't think he's ever really read a comic book. He's all over the place. When he was at DC, when I was working at DC, I was just like, everything I read by him, I was just like, I don't give a shit. I don't care. He just took the worst villains on the planet and put them in Justice League United. Why? Why wouldn't you want to get a hold of some more interesting characters? But he wouldn't know that they were shitty villains because he doesn't know anything about comic books.
Who was this?
I'm trying to remember his name. I always forget it. I used to use his name as a slur for shitty stories. Like, oh, your book got whatever that guy's name was. Like
Yeah, that would have been fun.
your book got Smith. I'm sorry, your book got Smith.
Andy.
Yeah, look, you got
Andy did it.
your
I knew
book
it.
got Andy Smith.
No, Andy would know his stuff. He's a big time nerd.
No. Yeah, see, Andy. Andy
I
knows
was
more
looking
about
through his
comic books than I do.
portfolios.
He
One
loves.
thing about Andy, because he's one of those guys I could talk to for hours just about comics. I love him and Dennis, and I got to work with him at some point. But one of the things, let me write. See, I'm always writing stuff down. I got to add him to my artist to work. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's already on there, but just in case, my artist to work with. One of the things I remember about him, I was looking through his stuff.
Jeff Lemire.
Okay.
When you read his comic book, he is technically a great writer, but I don't think he ever read a fucking comic book.
Like a superhero comic, you mean?
No,
I can tell that sometimes when someone is like, because Chris, like I was talking to Chris, and he's basically goes, my job was I was writing it to honor Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Like he was a huge fan. And it feels like that's often like, I want to do my own thing. And they actually like encourage that. And I'm like, well, to an extent, because even though his X-Men are all new, he didn't have to choose that. He chose to follow the old spirit out of principle. And that is, I feel like, missing. Violent Comics is Jim Lee was successful because of people like Arthur Adams, John Byrne. That's the thing. You look at, like, I remember people credit, Jim Lee, because most artists, to be fair, or a lot of them did, but he was like a fill-in artist for one issue. And then he's not seen again.
248.
For a while. Yeah, 248.
Rob Liefeld talks about Jim Lee, and Jim Lee, he says one of Jim's strongest attributes is before he gets on a book, he looks at the artists who made the character the most successful. Mm-hmm. And Jim Lee can absorb those attributes into his own style. And Uncanny X-Men, he looked at Neil Adams. He's like, oh, everybody loves Neil Adams, X-Men, and everybody loves John Byrne, and Jim loves John Byrne too. So he really took a lot of that technical, and of course he was in a studio with Mark Silvestri, so he was also like Mark Silvestri and Weiss Portacio were doing. I think it was actually Weiss Portacio was doing all that rendering. Weiss Portacio showed Jim and Mark Silvestri, look at what this guy, Barry Windsor Smith, did on Nails. And they saw all this amazing rendering. They saw the Barry Windsor Smith doing some insane stuff. And they kind of like mixed it in with their the California pen nibs look and stuff. And that's what you ended up with, the highly rendered Jim Lee stuff. Silvestri was doing it too. Weiss Portacio was doing it.
Yeah.
Grant Morrison? I'd never read any of Grant Morrison's Uncanny X-Men. I pretty much when those guys went to Image, I followed them, and I just kind of randomly would pick a Marvel book up. Like I like Joey Mad on Uncanny X-Men, but some of the Bichello stuff. But that was it. I definitely did not follow any of Grant Morrison's stuff on X-Men.
I get it.
Yeah, Marcus says that Carl Potts was he was laying out Jim Lee's early stuff. He's probably explaining Jim some of the storytelling and stuff, especially for a single character. I remember those first few issues.
Yeah, I remember. I had a long talk with Carl Potts actually about the Punisher when I was at Terrificon. I got him to sign my Circle of Blood book, and I was talking to him. And he was explaining how, like, basically it was Mike. I was like, oh, I'm friends with Mike Barron. Like, how'd that go about? He was saying that Mike's writing was very terse and not a lot of thought bubbles. And War Journal was basically, let's get a book that was showing his thought process. And that was what War Journal was. It was supposed to be a different writing style than Mike's. So I haven't read that. I've read the first, 13 issues of Mike's run. I think the next one I have to read is Kingpin Rules. I haven't read that yet. That's another run I want to finish, especially because I love Mike's stuff. Nexus, I'd love to read. Grant, let's see.
Keith Giffen did the same thing. Keith Giffen would work with younger artists, and he would lay out the book. So Keith Giffen not only wrote it, he was was dropping in the layouts or the roughs.
Yeah.
He did that for Jason Pearson on the Legion stuff. So it's back then, especially because books were selling more, it was easier for the talented guys to help build up the next talent. And that's really what they did. I don't think Marvel and DC are really that interested in building up, the talent. Who's going to be the next superstar? I think they're just like, well, like I said, the president goes, "Oh, we sold 10 million units last year." You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you mean comics? Yeah, we sold 10 million comics last year, so that's good."
Yeah.
Well, how many titles did you have to publish to sell 10 million units? I
Yeah,
don't
right.
know. That's someone else's department.
Yeah, exactly. It's too segmented. I see. I'd love to hire like a few people, but I don't want it to ever be that corporate, that segmented. Barron used to write by laying out his stories. That is true. Actually, Carl Potts said that I think Mike might even still have some of the pages, but because if you look at the first 5 issues, Klaus Janson penciled, inked, and colored them. It was, but Mike laid them out for Klaus to just do it. And I asked Klaus, I'm like, was it? He was like, yeah, it was too much. That was too much work. That's why he ended up going back to, I think, inking or whatever.
Oh yeah, dude. To go from inking to doing everything,
Yeah.
like wow. Well, I know exactly what that's like. That's what I did on Death Raider, and I'm like, oh, dude, I don't want to do this again. So.
Yeah. So, but you still like penciling, right, and laying it out, or do you?
I don't want to have to color the next book if the stretch goals are hit. Death Raider 2, someone else can color it. I just want to pencil and I want to write it, pencil ink it. I don't want to have to letter it. I don't want to have to color it. I'll just like right from the beginning, hey, next book is black and white, and I'd rather just be known as a black and white artist. Obviously, if the fans rush in and the book shoots up to 30K or something, that'll be one of the stretch goals. Would be, oh, now there's a color version because it's being supported enough where people want the color version. But that's still the foundation of the project of issue 2 would be it's a black and white book, but you guys supported it enough that now I hired a colorist to do the coloring.
Yeah.
So then there'd be a color version too, but I'm not going to color it. I had fun doing it, and I worked with a flatter, so that made it a lot easier. Like some of the scenes, I'm like, I didn't even send her to the script, but those are the right colors for this scene. I'm like, well, great job, colors. And then because they're doing the flatter, it's easy to change. Like, oh, well, that brown doesn't really work. It worked well to separate the artwork for the flats, but I easily can change it to this purple gray, and away away we go. So,
Violent Comics says, why didn't a lot of great writers and some artists move over to Image from Marvel? That's a good question.
Chris Claremont explained this perfectly.
Oh, let's hear it.
And it was really just from a financial standpoint. He said, because he was supposed to do the book Huntsman for Image, and he said that economically, especially in the beginning with Image, he said that like a guy like Mark Silvestri or Jim Lee, they can start drawing the project. They can put out a series of trading cards. That will help finance them working on the book. From his standpoint, no one's paying him to write Huntsman, even though he was making lots of money and he could have easily just done it on his own. No one's paying him to write Huntsman. Then he has to find an artist to draw it and then hope that the sales are there. Now, I think there might have been more ego involved in that, because you're like, wait a minute, you're Chris Claremont. You could easily afforded an artist, and you could easily waited for the checks to finally show up from Diamond, But his excuse why Huntsman never became a book at Image was because of the financial reasons, and the formula for Image was just set up a lot better for artists to write their own books. Now, gotcha. I know Rob Liefeld he didn't want someone to tell him what to write. That's why he would, for the most part, plot it. And then Eric Stevenson was doing the dialogue. Now Jim Lee just, I'm pretty sure Jim Lee and his buddy who was writing the Wildcat stuff was Eddie Choi. Jim, probably they got into an office and Jim was like, I want this to happen. I think it'd be cool to do this. And Eddie's like, oh, well, we could do this with Wildcats because we could do this. And Jim would be like, oh, that's a great idea. Write that down. Get me a script and I'll start penciling it. Like a buddy of mine, we were going to do a comic book, Al Snow, and he would call me up on his way to like the rental place. And he's like, hey, Rob, I was thinking of ideas for issue 5. And he literally would just blurt out a bunch of stuff to me. And I would sit there in a notebook and just jot it down. I really think that's what Eddie Choi's job was with Jim Lee. Jim Lee would go, hey, it'd be cool if we did this in issue 4. And then Eddie Choi would try to figure out a logical progression of how to do that with issue 4 of Wildcats. And then, Jim would draw it and then he would dialogue it. It'd become a baby comic book. If you were making millions of dollars, why would you want to share some of that with somebody else when you think you can write it yourself? Honestly, I mean, those guys are drawing big splash pages and 2 and 3 panel pages. They probably didn't feel like they needed a writer, and why would they want to share it? Why? Because it's not just the royalties or the money coming in. It's ownership of the trademarks. Like all that stuff gets more and more complicated. So I think that's why we didn't see a lot of writers flood into Image. Todd McFarlane and those guys weren't interested in working with writers.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the truth. And you can even look at those early sales. It doesn't matter if he needed a writer. He wasn't interested in a writer.
Yeah.
If you look at those early sales, remember that there was there was a couple of books that got big numbers, and the founders noticed that the books weren't like didn't Mike Grell have a book? Mike Grell had a book that came out like pretty early on with Image. Unfortunately, Mike Grell's book sold 1 million copies, but Todd McFarlane and those other guys saw that their books sold less. So instead of 9 books all selling 1 million copies, Mike Grell's a brand new book and it's an issue 1. His sells 1 million copies, but the other guy saw like, oh, our sales dropped by 100,000 copies. We literally just gave our customers to Mike Grell. Or we gave our sales to Mike Grell so he could sell 1 million. Yeah, so Image quickly realized like if we're going to sell 20 million copies a month, we want those 20 million copies to be ours. Yes, we don't want to bring in other people and have to split those 20 million because it's they realized quickly that the pie was only so big even during the speculator market. This is the pie. Do you want to share it with 5 other guys or are you just that core of 9 guys? We will, or 8 guys, whatever the Image found.
It was a 7. It was a 7, right? Because it was.
Yeah. You can either share your.
Dale Keown was like basically the 8th, from what I remember.
You can share your pie with 8 guys or 20 guys. How do you want to share your pie with 20 guys?
I think Tucci was like almost going to be one of them too, if I remember correctly.
I know. Well, that was probably when they were still thinking there's more money in sharing.
Yeah, I think Billy, I remember telling me that he was like he was close, that he was almost one of them.
Bart was one of them, was going to be one of them too, but Bart could not wait 9 months for a check. He's like, guys, I can't work for 9 months without a check. And Todd McFarlane would always go, oh, don't worry about it. We'll help you out. But Bart was like, I need some kind of contract. You can't tell me you'll help me out while I'm waiting on a check. He's like, I can't draw for 9 months.
Exactly. Because someone can say they're going to do something for you. Doesn't mean that, it could just be them being nice. He's Canadian, but
they could cut you a check for $50,000, which is great for the first couple months. But Bart was working at Valiant and he was, he saw hundreds of $1,000s. He saw some big royalty checks on some of those chromium cover Turok issues and stuff. So you want to pull someone off of big money and promise them bigger money, but it's a promise of bigger money. It's like, dude, I just saw cashed my last royalty check. It was $75,000, and you're saying I can make more money, but there's no promise.
Yeah. Man, I get it. It's Bart is such a nice guy. I'd love to get Bart on here one day, or get him to do something for me.
Bart is one of the best comic book artists ever.
He's so good.
Yeah.
I didn't. It's a shame I didn't get to edit his book at Phenom, but I was looking at some of the he was showing me some of the pencil pages one time when we were talking at a con. I mean, and they were. I was like, damn.
Well, as far as I know, there's only been 20 pages.
They were 20. They were a damn good 20 pages. Then.
Yes, I had fun inking those 20 pages.
Oh, did you? You inked? Well, I don't know if I saw all 20, but I saw a few, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Even the what was it, 8-pager he did with Chuck Dixon and Two Fisted Manly Tail. I mean, I haven't even read that much of Bart's work. We hung out after a con one time, and
yeah, that was cool. Well,
yeah.
Bart has Bart told me for him the fun part is constructing the page and the storytelling. When making everything the perfect line, the perfect pencils to make it super tight and all the perfect rendering. He goes, that's when he gets bored out of his mind.
Oh, is that where you come in?
No, I've never been talented enough to take a super rough Bart drawing and make it turn into a perfect Bart drawing. And Andy is Andy's learned under the Bart Sears tree, and Andy can't do that. No one can do that because
Bart's a different animal.
Andy says that the way Bart spots his blacks, really nobody does it like that. And you can Bart can do it just so, like, for me, if Bart handed me like a coloring book style artwork and said, all right, turn it into something, I'm gonna just render the fucking shit out of it. It's not gonna look like Bart. The faces are gonna look like Bart. The hands are gonna look like Bart. But it's gonna have the hell rendered out of it. Andy will render it, and it'll look very much like Bart, but it still won't be Bart if Bart just finished off the pencils. That's just the way art works. So.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
But yeah, he's a superstar, and it's too bad that I don't think that book. As far as I know, that book is it's on page 20. So maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe someday. Violent Comics said, Rob, did you know Sam Keith, and do you know what happened to him?
I don't know what happened to him. Do you know that he worked at DC for a while? He did those like the Batman Joker stuff artwork, and there were like just a bunch of double page spreads and stuff. Sam Keith, his Marvel Comics Presents covers and his Wolverine stuff was so weird and so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did that weird, his own book, The Max, which was super weird, but was very popular and had the cartoon on MTV. I think he he wanted to direct. I think he directed a movie.
Oh, nice.
You look at his stuff and it was all like, it's super crazy. It's super fucked up. It's super cool. I'm surprised nobody's ever tried to ape his style big time. I think it could be really interesting if someone tried to do like a solid Sam Keith, but Sam Keith, so much of his stuff is, it's like Chris Pichello, very unique, just him playing around, him doodling. Even if what are you going to do? You're going to do a Wolverine type ripoff and have weird stuff fighting another big guy and do weird, cool trees and mushrooms and grass. Like, you almost have to ape and just copy what they did to still feel the same. So.
Absolutely.
Well, Violent Comics, he probably made a lot of money at MTV, but unless you invest, that was 30 years ago. Even if you only spend okay, let's say he made $2 million off of MTV. After he pays taxes, if he's lucky, he has $1.25 million. Now, even if he only spent $50,000 a year, spend 30 years, that's $1.5 million. It's already gone. And can you imagine getting $1.25 million after taxes and telling yourself, now don't spend any more than $50,000 a year? What?
Yeah.
You're buying a house. You have
not everyone expected the industry to crash too, from what I understand. Like everyone's like, oh, we're great. Oh, we're not.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly. The industry went from, I sold. Well, what? Here's the perfect example. When they first announced Jeffrey Scott Campbell's miniseries issue 1, it sold like 750,000 copies.
Right.
But by the time it came out, the numbers were like 325,000 copies.
Mhm.
So that when you jump from 400,000 copies up as an artist, your check just becomes enormous by comparison.
Mhm.
You still make a lot of money with a $400,000, $400,000 print run or 400,000 copy print run, but 400,000 versus 750,000, that's looking at brand new cars and looking at a brand new house kind of thing. And that's what the industry. So the industry went from, comic book stores ordering almost 1 million copies of, and it was called what, Generation X, and then it ended up becoming Gen 13.
Mhm.
I was the miniseries and Gen 13 because there was a miniseries and then there was a series, but really that's what it was. Comic books, the most popular comic books went from selling 1 million copies to selling 300,000 copies, and then the next year they went from selling 300,000 copies to selling 200,000 copies, and then certain things would spike, like when Todd McFarlane did the Spawn Batman crossover, that was the #1 comic book for that year. Gears of War, Liam Sharp drew Gears of War for Image. When that book came out, that was the #1 comic book for that year. So there's always spikes, but the overall sales keep dropping. And Marvel and DC in 2024, and pretty much for the last like 5 to 10 years, their answer has been, we'll print more titles so that we still hit that millions of copies number. But it's comic book stores are like, oh, we can't sell half this shit.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff sitting on the shelves. I'm like, that was there last year.
I don't know Travis. Violet Comics keeps asking us questions. I don't know Travis. I was always a huge fan of Travis. Travis is supposed to be super fast, but he doesn't sit at the table. So he's a superstar. I think it might be too easy for him. Sometimes when something is really easy to do, like if you're super talented, it's super boring. Like Jim Lee stated many times in interviews, everyone tells him comic books must be the coolest job ever to work in. And Jim says, after the first hour, whatever your job is a job. He goes, it's exciting for that first hour. Like, oh, let me get into this. He goes, yeah. And then hour 2 hits you. Then hour 3 hits you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the job. There's a few people who say that they love their job. Honestly, I think most of the people who say that they just completely love their job and it's not a job, it's, every day they could do it. I think they've got a job that they could have done in 3 hours, but they turned it into an 8-hour gig kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like there's a whole process of doing it, but not being efficient at it. Yeah. And they're still successful at it. So they're like, oh yeah, I love my job. I get up in the morning. I'm super excited about it. And you're like, well, let's count the minutes you're actually doing it and not, staring off in the space or drinking coffee or, talking to clients or some bullshit. So
yeah, absolutely. No. Absolutely.
Well, we have blabbed for quite a while.
Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and say, yeah, right here, we just got a new backer rolled in. So,
oh, fantastic.
1,672 more will save Robert being enslaved by Jeff Bezos.
See, that is Art T-Bear lowering the bar.
Oh yeah.
That's 30. Well, really think about it. If I was saying it's gonna be hard to be able to do Death Raider 2 immediately when it was at 27, just getting it to 30. Not to bum everybody out, but how long does $3,000 last you?
Yeah.
Really getting into the 30s with right. Death Raider, because I think even if I scrape is just normal bills like electricity, my wife and I split half the bill, so half the mortgage, all that kind of thing. I could continue to work. I could continue just jump right into Death Raider 2.
If you had
But
30K.
it's I need $2,000 a month, and it's going to take $4,000. It's going to take 4 months to do Death Raider 2, the artwork for.
All right,
So
let's do it.
yeah. So it really, if honestly, if we get into the 32, 33, I'm going to be ecstatic because that gives me enough cushion to at least I'll have more than half the artwork done. So then I can put out the sign up. I can start the promotion, all that stuff. I'm not like, but we get to 30, that gives me that gives me a month and a half. So I would have roughly almost 20 pages done, which it would be a lot of pages. But you guys are like, dude, I just got Death Raider 1 and you want me to back Death Raider 2. What the F? And I'm like, well, I had $3,000. I had $3,000 to pay the bills while I worked at Death Raider. So I immediately had to jump into Death Raider 2 and then start selling Death Raider 2. And you're like, you guys would look at me and go, you son of a bitch.
Yeah,
So,
you want it. We want it. We want that book, and we know you're going to deliver. So everyone, make sure you get this book. Real quick, I want to ask before you go, because we've talked about artist influences. Who are because you're writing now? This is the first thing you've written, right?
yes. Yeah.
Who's
I
your
always
favorite?
jotted down ideas, but everybody jots down ideas.
So what did you learn from writing? And do you have any favorite writers?
I don't specifically have favorite. Well, Chuck Dixon, because his Bad Times is probably the first novel I've read in years. I look at a lot of movies and TV for influence. I do like. I always remember the Spider-Man stories because I like that Spider-Man is doing stuff and making jokes.
Right.
He's not standing there and making jokes. He's fighting the bad guy and he still makes jokes. I've always liked that feel in a comic book. It's probably one of the reasons I always like one of my favorite runs on Amazing Spider-Man is Todd McFarlane's and then Eric Larson's. I like the darker stuff. One of my favorite comic books is Return of the Dark Knight with Frank Miller.
Oh yeah.
I like the darker, the more brutal stories.
Gee, I couldn't have guessed.
Yeah, the book is called Death Raider.
Yeah. Gee.
It really for me, and I've explained this before, my writing style when I worked on this because I knew it was going to take me a while, I wrote in chunks. And I wrote in chunks so that I could expand certain sequences and I could contract other sequences.
Right.
So I literally move chunks around or add new chunks. So I had literally, when I started, I had 3 chunks of story. Mm-hmm. And as I worked, then there was 5 chunks of story, 6 chunks. And then I'm putting them together and I'm going, wait, this doesn't fit. I need 2 pages here. Let me pop these in. So I worked the story like it's a friggin' Lego set where I don't exactly know what I'm building. I just knew I felt like as I worked more on the Death Raider character, Death Raider would help me explore the story and the direction because literally there's the logistics of I have to explain his origin. I have to explain him building the suit. I got to explain him getting hurt, him recovering from that. So there's all these things that are just like logistically. I didn't want to do like some comic books where they do a 2-page spread and they just, literally it goes from the guy goes from a hospital bed to the last image is him in a costume. I didn't want to speed the story along that fast. I wanted to, actually, a real origin story. So that's what it was, here's the pieces that have to be in the book. Now, what are you going to do with the aliens, Rob? How are you going to make it more interesting? Let's add these subplots here. And honestly, because it took me a year, and I'm drawing it, I can mix that shit up. I can go, oh, that's a terrible idea. Let me change it. And so that a lot of freedom. I think that's why some people, like when they work on a graphic novel and they're very successful, they do take a couple of years because you're going to find out they're pulling pages, they're adding new pages, they're changing shit. Like, oh, I thought this would be a great idea, but as they worked on the artwork, they're like, oh, this is stupid, or this is kind of impossible to tell the story. Now issue 2 will be different because it's going to be me just jumping in and fucking just going. But issue 1 sets up a big fight scene with Death Raider, Anna, Hercules, which I haven't talked about Hercules in
You have
a
not.
week. Oh, Hercules is my Hulk type character for the book.
Ooh.
And he's Hercules because he's Hercules from mythology.
Oh,
And
shit. That's a
I
whole new
added a
dimension.
lot of mythology into like these Raycor, the aliens, have been on Earth for millions of years. That's where we get the mythology of Hercules. That's where we get the mythology of Hera. It's people looking at aliens and trying to explain what the fuck this, hyper technology is. It's not much more different. It's not really different than, what Marvel did with the Asgardians and shit.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah, I was totally forgot because I'm into Greek mythology and aliens.
Yeah.
Real quick, do you believe in aliens, or is it just a cool idea?
Oh, there's no way that there's not aliens.
Yes,
Dude, this universe is way they talk about there's not thousands of galaxies, there's millions of galaxies. There's literally in our universe, there's an infinite amount of galaxies. And a galaxy is so massive, there's no way there can't be aliens. Now, do they give a shit about us? I don't think it's aliens visiting Earth. I think it's humans from the future visiting Earth. And we don't want to accept that that's what we look like. We have giant eyes because all we do is sit in front of a giant monitor in virtual reality shit. So we have giant eyes and we have tiny little pale gray looking skin.
Exactly.
That's who we are. That's who
us in the future.
That's us in 600 years.
You think that's us in the future? Okay, because I'm not sure, but I do believe in the gray-headed aliens. Do believe that. Like, I fully believe that. There's too many encounters from across the world and across decades and locations by people that don't know each other, and they're consistently describing gray-headed aliens in gray suits and UFO. Like, come on. But that's a topic for another day. Yes. How the Greeks named the stars in the sky. Also, Violent Comics, real quick. Great. Thank you for coming by. Yeah, swing by anytime. Love it. He's been keeping us busy. Would Death Raider make you more money if it was being distributed by Image or Dark Horse?
When you put it in the comic book store, they keep half.
Yeah,
Diamond keeps 10%. Dark Horse would want a piece of it. The industry is in a really rough spot. And then it also means I lose complete control. Like they literally they wouldn't just distribute it. They'd be, they would influence it. So plus I don't have a name. I think it's hard enough for a person with a name to get Diamond or get Dark Horse or somebody to publish their comic book. And usually they're giving up half the rights, Would someone come to me who is a millionaire and said, Rob, I want to get Death Raider off the ground. Like, let's do a book every 6 months. We're going to, here's this superstar colorist, here's the letterer. I'm going to have a writer work with you with the script a little bit, just cause they, someone from the outside working with you with the ideas. Let's just get you rolling. I'd be like, well, what's my page rate? What am I getting out of this? Would I do that? To give up half the book? Sure, why not? I got lots of fucking ideas.
Yeah.
Honestly, if it meant here's my contract. Here, Rob, here's your contract. We're gonna make that. You're gonna work on Death Raider for the next 5 years. This is what we're gonna pay you every month to work on Death Raider. And we'll co-own it, and we'll make sure it gets on Amazon. We're going to crowdfund it. We'll crowdfund the shit out of it. And then after crowdfunding, it'll be on Amazon stores, and we'll eventually make it into comic books and, comic book stores and all that other stuff. Sure. I'd say that. I am, this isn't a $200,000 campaign where I can go, dude, this is my own shit and I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
That's just realistic. We all have bills. All of us have bills. We all know that. So, yeah,
people don't realize how much it costs. Like, because you're like, oh, you made that much money. It's like, well, production is a thing.
And shipping.
Yeah,
Fucking shipping, dude.
Shipping.
Yeah. Ask
Yeah.
Randy. Randy keeps buying stuff from me, and he's paying shipping every time.
Yeah.
You know, like I literally got to cut Randy a check, and I'm gonna put all this shit in one box
Yeah, that's
because
the
I'm
thing.
like Randy keeps paying shipping over and over again every time you order something.
Randy's good. Yeah, Randy's good people. But yeah, no,
Yes, he
it's we
is.
don't realize shipping because that's part of the. This is a little lesson, guys. It's you don't make as much money as you think. I know it's nice to be like, oh, look at how much money they made, but no, the shipping is added to the goal.
Yeah, it's
So they
yeah,
50%
that
of
number.
goal.
Yeah.
Rob's page rate is in that goal. Yeah. What's
Oh,
the that's
Rob
money.
has no page rate on this.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we made the joke. Well, if by the time it's over, if we get to like 35, the page rate goes up. But you know the whole story about IDW and how they want to pay $200 for everything.
Yeah.
When Death Raider was at 27, I figured it out. You know, minus shipping, minus what the books cost to print. My page rate for doing everything was $200. I'm like, oh, I can
legalize theft. Yeah, legalize
I'm
theft.
like, well, you actually have to make money to pay taxes.
Oh yeah, that's the loophole.
I've spent more money when this was at 27K. I spent more of my own money working on Death Raider the whole time than I raised on Death Raider.
I believe it.
Well, you know.
Oh, I know.
It's
people
not,
are like, Vaughn, you made so much money. I'm like, it's cute that you think that.
That's not a complaint.
Because it's also I'm already funding issue 2 with
yeah.
You know, like
we aren't complaining. This is the business that we're in.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm telling people I'd like to get into the 30s because I do love this business. I love the backers. I love doing this. I love talking. Well, I love talking to people when I need to. Honestly, I would rather just work on the pages so you guys can see the next story. I mean, that's just the nature of, dude, I've been in comic books for 20 some years where it's all about Rob, get back to the table. So, hey, Rob, get to a live stream. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What
And now suddenly you're like,
makes
what?
me itchy. Yeah.
But you know what it does though? You're like, suddenly I feel like you're probably like, wait, people cared about what I was doing at the table. I mean, that must be nice. Like, you know, because people are like, I remember I've posted stuff like, oh, I love that guy Suicide Squad run. You're interviewing him. You know, like I've had stuff like that. So it does. I will say one thing it does do is it does make you celebrate your victories is one of the upsides. Because there are days where I'm like, I want to just write today. You know, I don't want to talk on a live stream. But then you do get to sometimes it leads to something. So, you know.
Well, honestly, when people type this, I can actually read it and hear it. When people ask you a question at a comic book convention, half the time you can't hear
what?
Yeah, you can't. Like literally, you just want a chalkboard in front of the table.
You kind of just nod your head.
Write it. Yeah.
And you go,
yes. I just nod my head and go, yeah,
cool.
Yeah, that's
great.
cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That no, I know that routine.
Yeah.
But no, this has been great. But I mean, that was what Andy Smith's advice to me when I was first starting the company. He goes, for the first 5 years, you're going to lose money, was his advice. And then he goes, then you could start to make money.
See, that rat bastard didn't tell me that.
He didn't tell you that?
No, because he knew I needed to pay the bills. He's like, oh, I'm not going to tell Rob this. Rob won't get into this. Rob.
Well, you also have years of experience and, a name.
It didn't matter.
Okay. Well,
I didn't do enough live streaming.
Yeah.
Look at Jimmy. Jimmy doubled my number because he live streamed the shit out of everything.
Well, like I said, you need shows to get on. Let me know.
I appreciate it, dude.
Of course.
But
I got that.
I love all you guys. It was fun talking with you, Vaughn.
Oh yeah, same to you.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say before we peace out? We picked up at least one backer, which is nice. Mm-hmm. Hopefully more come in. Guys, you have until what day are you closing out? Monday?
I am closing out Monday night. I'll be closing out on Kings. So that'll be that, what is it, 3 a.m. where you actually close it or the whatever bullshit. It's I haven't done it yet. So
all right, I'm going to tell you. So this is how you mess up. So I did an accidental 2 closeouts because you have to ask a day in advance, say opt in to close out by this date.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, I just waited till 3 a.m. and then I go, oh, I could close. And I was looking for the close button. I was like, oh, I was supposed to ask. So that's why my Indiegogo went a day past, is because I didn't ask. They'll prove it like that, but you got to ask them. like beforehand, so that way
Okay.
it does actually close at 3 a.m.
Someone else just told me that on a live stream, which
Yeah.
so then so technically it won't close out for another day then, because I'm going to do the whole thing where I want to look for the button and then I'll have to ask. But I don't want to, because people already told me, dude, don't put in a date and then you screw it up, because their date is different because they're on the West Coast, and you don't want to screw up that logistic where you're on Kings and the damn thing's already closed. Like, don't want to do your official closeout and the shit's closed. So I'd rather just trail on for an extra day where people are like, oh, hey, I was able to back. I'm like, okay, cool. So
Yeah.
But yeah, Monday night is the official closeout.
Yeah. All right. Well, sounds good. So everyone tune in for that. And anything else before we head out?
No.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to play the show for Phenomenova as we head out. I do have a live show be going on tonight. Also, Jake Hyper Wizard is launching his book tonight, so be on the lookout for that. I'm going to be on a show. I'll post about the show I'm going to be on tonight. And see you guys next time.
See ya on Billy's show.
Yeah, so see you when's Billy's show?
9 o'clock. I'll see you
9
everybody at 9 o'clock.
All right. See, there's always a show. You're always going to stream over someone. It just happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
got to put number one first. All right. See you guys. And check out Rob on Always Mirrored Billy's show. Peace out.
When the whole world was dragged into World War III, brave men like my father fought on the front lines. And they weren't alone. That was 20 years ago. Now it's up to us to carry on their legacy. And every so often, the earth from which we come gives way for something new. Something greater to be born, and with them, even greater threats to face. Bring it on! Phenomenova. For you, Dad. For you.